Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second season of our World of Publishing webinar series. My name is Lamar Giles, and I've been a professional storyteller for nearly 25 years. I've published over a dozen novels. I'm William and Mary's inaugural writer in residence, and I'm here to engage the William and Mary community in fun and exciting ways that promote our incredible library, literacy, and general creative pursuits. The World of Publishing webinar series offers insightful conversations with publishing professionals to demystify an often perplexing industry. It is suitable for the career-minded writer, the casual writer, the student writer, and those who are simply curious. In today's session, we're going to be talking about bestsellers. The conversation will be recorded and available for those who are unable to join us live today. But for those in the session, a Q&A box is available at the bottom of the window for you to submit questions that we will attempt to address either during the conversation or during a designated Q&A session before we close out. If we miss your question, you can email me at lgiles@wm.edu and I will attempt to get you your answer. Without further delay, let's meet today's guest. Tiffany D. Jackson is the New York Times bestselling and award-winning author of young adult novels Monday's Not Coming, Allegedly, Let Me Hear a Rhyme, Grown, White Smoke, Santa in the City, The Weight of Blood, Marvel's Storm, Dawn of a Goddess, and co-author of Blackout and Whiteout. A Coretta Scott King John Steptoe New Talent Award winner and an NAACP Image Award nominee, she received her Bachelor of Arts in Film from Howard University and has over a decade in TV and film experience. The Brooklyn native is currently splitting her time between the boroughs she loves and the South, most likely multitasking. Jason Reynolds is the #1 New York Times bestselling author of more than 20 books for children and young adults. A 2024 MacArthur Fellow, Jason is best known for his novels All-American Boys, co-written with Brendan Kiely, the Track series, and Long Way Down, which received Newbery, Prince, and Coretta Scott King honors. Among his many accolades, Jason was named the National Ambassador for Young People's Literature by the Library of Congress from 2020 to 2022. Jason lives in Washington, D.C. You can find his ramblings at jasonwritesbooks.com. Welcome to you both.
Man, why are you talking like this, bro?
I know,
right? Okay. All right. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. No, okay, but for real, before we get started, Tiffany, I think I have to have an outdated bio because the scammer and blood in the water aren't there. And I'm bringing them up. I'm bringing them up because they are both nominated for the Edgar this year in 2 separate categories, which is an incredible accomplishment. I mean, if it's happened before, I'm not aware of it. Do you know?
It has.
No, they haven't had and they said it's very rare to get a double nomination in 1 year. So yeah. Which is a long time coming.
Yeah. You going to the party?
I am. I'm gonna go. So I'm very excited. But yeah, it also feels a little bittersweet. And you know why, but yes.
Yeah. But no, I mean, but here's the thing. I'm crossing my fingers you take home 2.
I hope so.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And Jason, how you been?
You know me, bro. Working. The usual.
Yeah. Well, look, so we're talking bestsellers today. I always say I like to bring people on that can talk to stuff I don't know about, and that's one thing I don't really know that much about. So I want to hear some things about what it's like to be in that position from 2 people who I think have fantastic work. And before we get into that, for people who don't know you, I just want to start with some basic questions. And Tiffany, I'll start with you. Where did you grow up and when did you recognize your desire to be a storyteller?
So I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. I was born in Fort Greene, and I knew I wanted to be a writer at 4 years old. I basically we used to practice your letters and trace letters to learn how to write. I realized if I put letters together, I could spell a word. And so the first word I spelled on my own was nose. And I was like, I'm a genius. And I ran to my kitchen and I told everyone I'm going to make books because I didn't know the word for author. I didn't know the word for writer. I just kept saying I'm going to make books. And that was the start basically from there. And it took a little while to get here. I'm from an immigrant household. So, we're supposed to be lawyers or doctors or whoever, evil scientists, as long as you make money. And the idea of being broke, starving artist was very scary to my family. So it took a little while to get here. But yeah, I'm here.
What about you, Jay?
From DC, and I think I started I fell in love with it at 10 and started to aspire to be it at 15, 16. Just because, like most of us, it's like who I mean, Tiff grew up in New York City, so there's a more of a likelihood in New York that you might actually have a writer who lives on your block, you know what I mean? Just because of New York City, the New York City-ness of it all, right? But where I'm from, we ain't the major industry here is education and government, right? So we didn't know any writers. I never met a writer until I think I met Terry McMillan when I was like 19. A girlfriend's mom took me to a book signing and I met Terry McMillan. And that was the first time I'd ever like met someone who was a professional author. Before that, it was, and so because of that, it took me a while to even realize that it was a thing I could do, that it was a possibility. Um, and so, yeah, around 16, 15, 16 is when I was like, I think I can maybe try my hand at it. And then at 20, I got signed, um, which sounds more impressive than it is because life didn't change for me. And then at 30, 30, 30, and then at 30, life changed for me. And yeah, it took a while.
Okay, so
And life don't always change, by the way, for us.
yeah, yeah. So you got signed at 20.
Mm-hmm.
What was the book?
My name is Jason. It was me and the other Jason's first book. We were kids, 2020. I think I was 20 and he was 22, 21, 22. We got signed by Harper.
So, okay, and then you said you got signed again at 30. So, I mean, within the 10 years, what was going on then? Like,
I mean, look, I got signed. The first book came out in 08, 07, 08, I think, 07, 08.
mhm.
And, America went into recession. And so, it was the best of times and the worst of times, the Obama years and also economic downturn. And publishing industries got hit, right? This is when like the newspapers began to shutter. And people don't know that the newspaper companies are usually what fund the book world, at least back then, right? So that's why you always hear like the Rupert Murdoch stuff, right? Like people who own the newspapers were making money. And because they were making money, they could then fund the literary. Back then, they could then fund the publishing industry. So when the newspapers began to close, the publishing industry began to tighten the purse strings. And the first people to get cut was publicity departments. And so my little book came out, and nobody ever saw it or heard about it, or you know what I mean. And it took another 7, 8 years to get back in the game. And in the meantime, I was working in clothing stores doing my thing. I was a shop boy in New York City.
Were you still hopeful that publishing would happen? Were you writing the whole time?
It ebbed and it flowed, man. There were some years I was hopeful, and there were some years that I had decided that maybe. I mean, here's the thing: I love working in the clothing store,
Mhm.
right? People really begin. If you, this is a very New York thing, by the way. If you live in New York or if you're from New York, you know that like everywhere else in the country, most other places in the country, a shop boy, like working in a shop or a boutique, is seen as like a starter gig. But in New York, if I'm selling $5,000 suits, I don't want to buy that. I don't want to buy a $5,000 suit from a 17-year-old boy, right? So you can be 40 working in a shop, and it's a profession. Like I actually really enjoyed it, and I probably would still be doing it if it didn't pan out for me. I really liked working in the clothing store, and that was pretty much my jam. And look, I also was frustrated, and I was frustrated, right? It was kind of like literary industry. You got your dream come true, but then it's dashed because you realize that you're not nearly as important as you think you are. People ain't really checking for you like that. That's just a fact, right? And you realize that it's a humbling experience. And so I pivoted for a while, but then I had a mentor, Christopher Myers, who was Walter D. Myers' son, who asked me to write another book, and that's how When I Was the Greatest came.
Nice, nice. Tiff, what was going on with you around the time of your first publishing deal?
Um, I was still working in television. So I graduated from Howard. I graduated with a film degree. So I was supposed to be working in films and television. And I started at National Geographic. I left there. I came back or went back home to New York. I was at Rock Nation, so I was working with Jay-Z's company. Then I went to BET and I was at MTV. So I was like kind of all over the place. And I had a great gig. I was in production management. So I was going to all like the award shows and stuff like that. I was doing stuff on the side. I was doing music videos but I was still always writing. And it's funny, like people always talk about that, like, or even like all of my production people I'm still very much friends with, they didn't know that I was an author because I was doing it on the side. Like I would wake up at 5 a.m. every day. I would write. I'd write on the train to work. I was writing on set. I was writing on planes, trains, and automobile whenever I had to go places. Even there's like this hilarious picture of me at one of the BET Awards. Kanye West is performing on stage, and you see me off stage with headphones, and I'm sitting there clickety clacking, and they think that I'm working. I was actually writing because I had already like I wrapped up everything I had to do. Like, like great, Kanye's here. That's great. I've already just worked a 17-hour day. I'm tired. But it was something that always drove me to that. And it wasn't until I got my first book deal in 2015. So I got an agent in 2014. And in 2015, I went on sub and I got immediately snatched up by HarperCollins. And it was pretty wild because I was still working. And so I was like all excited. Like I got the book deal like while I was at work. I like went outside. I was like, did a little happy dance, went back inside. But I really like I didn't think that I was going to do this full time, right? Like I just thought I was going to write a book or two and just, call it a day and still work in television. But it was so impossible to do both. Because television is a pretty, and don't get me wrong, I really did love my job. I really love my gig. But there were 17-hour days. There was meetings that I could not miss to go and do anything that had to do with publishing. And so I had to make a choice at that point, like, okay, either I leave this life and I basically told myself, like, okay, once my book comes out, and my first book came out in January of 2017, once that comes out, I'm going to give this a year. And if I don't feel like anything is happening, I'll go back to television. And, I was like, I could take off a year that, I'll be straight. And I have not worked back in television since. So it's been such an amazing road. And I can't believe I'm here. So I'm always incredibly grateful to be here.
Well, you bring up something that kind of leads into my next question. You talked about giving yourself a year to see how it went once you got the deal. And so, Jason, I'm curious with you getting signed for the second time,
Mhm.
what sort of mental adjustments did you make going into this next round of publishing? That, yeah, yeah.
One, pay your taxes. Uh, Save your money and pay your tax. Save your money and pay your taxes, right? That's the first thing. And like, look, man, we poo-poo that kind of stuff, but it's true, right? Those of us who are on this side of the wall, you realize that money coming is funny business, right? The way the money work, it ain't always as consistent as you think it is. So save your money and pay your taxes, right? I really mean that. I learned that the second time around. And also that because of the way the industry is structured, especially for us in the children's space, and also, Lamar, I don't know who we're speaking to here, but unfortunately, I'm going to have to say,
Yeah.
uh, the children's world and Black and brown folk within the children's world, um, there is an interesting thing, and I'm sure you'll have somebody on here to talk about that at some point too, perhaps. But I think what I learned is, despite the fact that we shouldn't have to be so generative, your career does depend on your ability to generate, right? There is, and there's a lot of unpacking that we all have to do around productivity, of course, but in this industry, you live and die on your ability, not just to have a whole bunch of good ideas, but also your ability to execute them, which is a talent in and of itself. Can you finish the story? Right? Can you finish the
Yes.
thing? Right? And I think,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? And I think that's really what I've learned. That the second time, it's like, yo, bro, one, you need to have more than one good idea. And two, you need to be able to get to the finish line.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
for sure. And also, ain't nobody checking for you. So you better believe in yourself a whole lot.
Hmm.
Take this kind of risk on yourself.
Yes.
Now, I've often said people don't tell you this. The skill isn't being able to write a book; it's being able to write another book.
Yep.
So,
Yes.
no, I hear you 100%. And we're starting to get some questions from the viewers. Um, let's see. We got a question from Michael Daniels. How far along should you be in the writing process to start seeking out agents, querying, and all that?
I mean, so I don't know, Tiff. You answer first, because I may have a different kind of.
You're going to, but yeah. You need to have a full manuscript, point blank, period. Like, don't start looking for agents until you have a full manuscript because they will turn you away. And you don't want to get turned away just because you don't have a full manuscript. And I was just on a panel about this yesterday too. When I say full manuscript, because people say, like, oh, when do you know it's done? When you're sick of it, when you are sick of your own novel and you know it's done and it still won't be done because you still are going to have edits that your agent may send you, your editor is going to send you, a copy editor is going to send you. You're going to always be editing that until it actually is printed. So you just need to get used to that, but ultimately you know it's done when you feel like you have put in all the words that you're supposed to make it happen. So yes, you need a full manuscript before you go out to an agent.
Yeah, I agree. I wasn't going to disagree. Actually, we're actually on the same page. I think you and look as somebody, and so yes, you need a full manuscript, and there are lots of reasons why. One, what if I like it, and I say, let me see the rest of it, and you ain't got it,
You're right.
right? You show me you. Let's say you submit a chapter or two. Let's say you submit three chapters. Let's say the submission, like the actual query says, just send your opening chapter, and you send an opening chapter, and I say this is jumping. I want to see the rest, and you don't have it, right? Like you shot yourself, right?
Yeah.
You ruined your opportunity, and so you want to be as prepared as possible. As somebody who now gets to operate on both sides of this wall, because I own an agency, co-own an agency, I can tell you that Tiffany is 1 billion% right, yo. One, because I might want to see it, and two, because I'm not trying to invest in nobody that's not willing to completely invest in themselves. And I don't want to take a risk on you without proof that you can finish.
Right. Like the biggest scam that I've learned in about like publishing and stuff like that
Spec, spec.
is basically like you need to have the tenacity to actually be an author. You need to actually have a finished product ultimately. They need to see that you can finish a product. So don't like, so that's why there's so little authors in the world, honestly, is because a lot of us will say, "Oh, I have a book I want to write," but they don't actually finish the book. So don't be that guy.
And
Like,
also, and also on the same note, and that's why I kept screaming spec, because look, sometimes we got to take deals on spec, and I get it because you need to support your family and do the things you need to do while you have it gives you wiggle room to write the book. But if you don't think that the process of writing the book shifts with that money on your head, you are sorely mistaken. It changes the process. So before you get into the financial weeds, right? And the expectations that come from somebody paying you before you have finished the thing, make exactly the thing you want to make.
And I'll just say this: I've heard that horror story of authors reaching out to an agent when they haven't finished the book, and it's always seemed like a bit of self-sabotage to me. Like they're either looking for validation to keep going or looking for a reason to stop. And it
Yeah.
comes back to what you say about believing in yourself. You got to have the tenacity to finish that product to the best of your ability and then show.
And you got to be patient.
Yeah, yeah.
right.
Because if
It's
you,
like
you you have never been in a slower industry than this.
yes, yes, yes.
And
So, question for both of you here. Oh, I'll ask you first, Jason. What book was your first to hit the New York Times bestseller list, and how did you get the news?
it's a tricky question, but the honest answer is All American Boys hit the list for a week. It was a blip. It hit number 10 for a week, a year and a half after it had been out.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that was the first one. And if I'm being completely honest with you, me and Brendan were together, and we were kind of like we thought it was a mistake, and then we just pretended like it didn't happen. It was kind of like, all right. It was weird. It was sort of like it was the most anticlimactic experience of my life. It was like, oh, we were like in the middle of nowhere. We just came out of a school visit. It was a Wednesday. They were like, yo, you guys hit the list at number 10. And we were like, really? A year and a half after the book was out. We had no idea why, or and it could be anything that sort of shifts the list, the enigmatic New York Times bestsellers list, which is a whole other part of the conversation, Lamar.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
it jumped on for a second and jumped off, and then I didn't hit the list again until um, Spider-Man came in at number 5, and then Stamped came in at number 1. So we're talking years later for both of them.
Did you celebrate?
No,
Why?
by the time I hit the list, I knew too much.
Gotcha, gotcha,
Yeah,
gotcha.
yeah.
Tiff, what about you? What was the first one to hit the New York Times list, and did you celebrate?
The first one that hit the New York Times bestsellers was Grown, and that came out September of 2020. So we were like thick in the pandemic, and I was actually doing a virtual visit like this. And my editor was calling me, and I was like, why is he calling me? And I didn't know that, your editor calls you when you hit the list. So I was sort of like, excuse me for 1 second. I had students on hold. Excuse me 1 second. I like answered the phone and he's trying to tell me, and I was like, oh, okay, well, bye. And I like hung up and I was like, I'm gonna start my intro over again because I'm a New York Times bestseller. And that's basically how I found out. I didn't celebrate either because I was in the middle of a pandemic. I think I probably made some cookies for myself because I was in my apartment by myself. But yeah, no, I didn't really celebrate, um, and I think I've hit the list ever since.
Well, Jason, I don't know how you feel. I was reading Grown and texting Tiffany the whole time I was reading it, and I've told her since, like she's really great at writing dudes I want to beat up.
Oh,
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, 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 yeah. But if you know Tiffany, that should be of no surprise. You know what I mean? That shouldn't shock you. You know what I'm saying?
we have a
But
question from April
yeah,
Green.
yeah.
What book, yours or someone else's, would you recommend to a young adult to get them hooked on reading?
I mean, if I'm picking a Tiffany book, me personally, I'm probably gonna go with Allegedly. Me personally, yeah, that book, you know, I mean, that book is it's intense, but it has. See, I think, and Tiff knows this because I've been like on her back about this for a long time. I actually think that like we all do different things, right? And we all have different skill sets and different strengths and weaknesses, and like even the fact that we can both exist on the list, which is a whole other thing. We write very different things, and what I don't have, right? I think that Tiffany has on the line. Most people, this is what they say, right? This is an old publishing adage. They say that either you're a good storyteller or you're a good writer, but you're rarely both. And Tiffany has specifically in all of her books, but allegedly, because that was the first one, and the first one I read, I was like, where it's like, oh, this person really understands like the sentence, and this person understands sort of like a propellant story. Most of us don't. Me, I love sentences. My stories, I'm not a plot guy, right? We're just kind of hanging out for 200 pages. It's quiet. It's an experience of a day or two or a week or a month, right? And then the story is over, right? We've had like an examination of young Black life. That's pretty much what I do. Whereas Tiffany is like, look, these sentences going to hit, but also this is a train that is moving. And I think that is what is necessary to get somebody hooked. So I would pick Allegedly for her. For me, I would just pick Long Way Down for this because it's the one time I do the thing, even though it's still just an examination of Black life, which is differently. You know what I mean?
I was actually going to pick Boy in the Black Suit. That's actually my
That's
Yeah, I
favorite.
love
my
that book.
favorite,
I loved it.
but
That's my favorite.
it's only read by adults.
I don't know why. No, it's one of my favorites, and I remember the first time I met Jason, which was way, way
Yeah.
long time ago. But I thought he was actually from New York. Like, the way that he was writing characters, I was like, oh, he sounds like my cousin. And that's why I was like, oh, no, he's not. But yeah.
Yeah.
But you feel like you're a part of the story, especially for kids. I think that's incredibly important. So yeah, that would be my first kind of like choice. And notice how neither one of us picked like a fantasy novel. And obviously
Yeah.
all three of us could talk about that,
That's a whole other
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
And for Lamar, I would pick my guys, man, the Austin brothers, first day of summer is
Yeah.
my favorite.
Yes.
My oh man. You came up in
Yeah.
conversation the other day, bro. Like, yeah, that
Well,
those are special.
thank you. And I'll say this. I love Boy in the
Or the
Black.
last day of summer. Is it the first or
The
the last?
last day
The
of summer.
last
Yeah,
Last,
last.
last day.
Last.
yeah, I knew what you meant.
Last. Yeah.
But I would say I love the Boy in the Black Suit. But I will admit, when I was reading Long Way Down, I sent you a text. I don't know if you remember it, but I said I think you got an Illmatic, and our hip hop people out there will know
Yeah.
exactly what
That
I
was
mean.
it. Yes.
Yeah, man. Thank you, man.
Yeah, I don't know. I got a question here because we were talking about the nature of the best-selling list. So we got a question from Clarissa Phillips.
Hmm.
People use the phrase best-selling author frequently, but it seems like they don't always mean New York Times, like you both have. What else counts as best-selling?
Uh Go ahead, Tiff.
No, I was thinking like indies bestsellers. There's also
Indies, Time Magazine.
Time
They
Magazine.
all count. It's just if you New York. That's why it always says New York Times bestseller.
Yeah.
But all the bestsellers, they count as bestsellers. You know what I mean? Amazon, even the Amazon, it all counts. And I think it gives people an opportunity to elevate their books. And so people use it liberally like that. And honestly, I say go for it. You know, you know what I mean?
Yeah, because why not? I mean, if you are selling a lot of books on Amazon, like, you are a best-selling author. And to be
Yeah.
honest, and I talk about this a lot, and I wish someone would have told me this early in the game that, you can be a quiet bestseller. You may not make on a list, but you actually are selling a lot of books, and no one would ever know it. Except for publishing. Publishing knows it because they're looking at your book scan numbers, your P&L, etc. So they know like what's up, but the rest of the world doesn't. But they know that you sell a lot of books. And I feel like I learned a lot of that through like working in middle grade because there are middle grade authors out here who you've never seen their book for a day in their life, but they have when a signing line comes, the
Oh
line
my
is
God.
down the road. Like it is.
Alan Gratz,
Yeah.
yo,
Yeah.
Alan Gratz
Yeah.
sells gazillions of books, and no one knows what he. I mean, we do, but most people don't know what he looks like. Most people haven't seen the books, you know.
Yeah.
Like, he don't got to do nothing but write his book and keep it moving. And I'm like, I aspire. Like, yes. So I would not get caught up in the bestseller title. And I wish that was something that I had learned early in my career, but because I didn't grow up in this industry, I feel like, even what I'm 9, 10 years in almost now, like I still feel like I'm learning things as I go along, which is great.
Yeah.
We got a question from Paris Hamilton, which actually is very similar to a question I was going to ask. So I'll
Mhm.
go with Paris's version. Um, Following Lamar's question to Jason around what happened after the first bestseller. After your first book became a bestseller, did the pressure, internal or from your publisher, change how you approach the next project? And how did you make sure you were still writing truth instead of chasing what had already worked?
Mm. Damn.
Well, I can tell you for me, no. I was fortunate that sometimes it's about timing. Tiff, you got in. When did it allegedly come out?
2017.
Oh yeah, you were part of like that, y'all. Because you was with Nick and all of that. Y'all were all together,
Yeah. Yeah.
Nick and Ange and all of that. So I think that was the year that things changed a bit.
For you. Yeah.
And I think I publishing when I came in, they told me, and they told most of my sort of crew that you never check your numbers. We're not expecting you to do much. We're just expecting like a simmer over the course of a year. If you can get to like a simmer, a little bit of a buzz. We just want you to focus on making whatever's next. If you hit the list, cool, but we're not expecting you to. And honestly, we're not expecting you to win much awards either. Maybe you'll be on some end of the year list, and that'll be good for us. That'll show us that we're headed in the right direction, and that this is sort of a long game. That's the way publishing was presented to me. So I've never ever felt pressure to hit the list. I've never felt like that. That's not what caused my pressure. What caused my pressure was people. So for me, what ended up changing, and the two of them know this, is like just people, the expectations of people, the people sort of investing in the work, or like it just became a bit much for me, especially in like 18, 19, 20, 21. It became very intense for me. And I felt pressure in that way. People were sort of asking me to, it's like the expectations were like, my boys, Jason, they're gonna die if you don't write the next. And it's like, yo, I can't, like, that's not what I got into it for. I love kids, but I can't save every child. I can't, right? It's not really what the thing is. It's not really what this is about. And so the list didn't really cause any pressure. The publishing company didn't cause any pressure for me. But my particular career went a particular way where I became face forward, and the public is what caused pressure for me.
Right.
Same thing for you, Tiff?
No, I feel like the pressure was more about um output at some point. Like at some point, because in the beginning of my career, I was drastically underestimated. Like they didn't expect much from me. And you could tell by the way they marketed my books, how many they printed, and I was always selling out. Like it was pretty like it was terrible in the very beginning. And it looked bad on them because they just were counting me out. They were just like, oh, this will just be like one book. And they just, like I said, they very much underestimated me. But then when the book started to like start to do well and I started to really make a name for myself, that's when they were like, we need a book from you every year. We need a bestseller from you every year.
Mm.
And they ultimately are just assuming that every book I'm going to put out is going to be a bestseller. And and even up until last year, so my most recent book, The Scammer, came out in October. And that first week, it didn't hit the list. It should have hit the list based on the numbers and based off like kind of the data and everything like that. But it didn't. And it was sort of like, it wasn't an eruption, but everyone was like, huh. It hit the list the next week, and maybe I think the week after that. But it was still like oh, that was weird. And I felt that. I felt them saying that was weird that you didn't hit the list. And it was kind of like, well, am I always supposed to? Like, damn. So I didn't know that that was a thing. But yeah, for me it was the pressure of like, we want a thriller from you every year. And I don't have it like that anymore to work every year. Like, definitely responsibilities, definitely, full-time authoring is not just writing, in a cabin in the woods. Like, full-time authoring is also like doing school visits, it's doing admin stuff, it's doing taxes, it's, you basically are HR, marketing, everything in between. So yeah, I can't, I don't know if I can really write a book every year anymore like I used to. Also, I'm getting older, like I'm tired, shoot, like.
No, talk about that. God,
Yeah,
brain don't do it like it used to.
not at all, nah.
That is real. That is real. Tiff, while we're on you, I got a question specifically for you from Lauren Weber.
Mhm.
Lauren says, I have a similar background as Tiffany. I've been writing since I was 4 and from an immigrant family, so I never fully pursued writing. I've struggled in adulthood getting back that inspiring writing spark with work, etc. Do you have advice on how to get that back while also in the midst of working in everyday life?
Mm. I would say one, reading. I learned how to be a writer by reading. And that sounds real corny, and I always say that because it's like, oh, read your books. But no, like I read a lot of craft novels, and that's basically how I was able to study the art form of writing. So I would say open up your craft books. And it doesn't have to necessarily be about like novels. It also be about screenwriting because I learned how to write by reading screenwriting novels. I would also continue to read novels in different like genres. That always kind of like opens up the door. And also watching movies as well too. It doesn't need to be like movies that are like inspired by a book. It just needs to be good, well-tell, movies. Like I'm not telling you, no shade. I'm not telling you to go out and watch a Tyler Perry film. I'm telling you to watch something like Sinners that's going to actually like spark some creativity out of you. So that's ultimately what I would do.
Oh, Tyler
And just a
Perry
note,
catch a
since you brought up
stray.
Sinners,
You got Tyler Perry caught a stray on that joint.
I every day, every day.
Golly.
Hmm.
I was just gonna say, the center screenplay is available for download for anyone who also wants to watch and read
Yes.
Coogler's work. So that's helpful too. It's a combination of things. So I just put that out there since you brought that up. Fantastic movie, as we know. Um, got another question from Andrea Hilton. Was there a time when you were shy about sharing your writing, and how did you move past that shyness? I'll start with you, Jason, and then come back to Tiff.
I'm still shy about it. Nobody sees my work but the editor. I don't have any writing buddies. I got buddies who are writers, but I'm not sharing no work. Tiff ain't never going to get drafted in my work
No, no.
ever. Like that's just not a thing. And for me, I'm far too insecure about that. That's just not my bag. So when I feel like it's good and done or done enough, then I send it to the only other person. I mean, occasionally my agent will see it, but I've been with the same editor for so long, we can skip that step too, and then go straight to my editor, and then we begin that discussion. But the answer is yes. I'm terrified of people seeing my work until it has gone through what it needs to go through to be seen. So yeah.
Yeah, I occasionally will I think I'm more terrified of like the masses seeing my book first. I'm less intimidated by like sending it to friends. So like I've sent books to Lamar, I've sent books to, Nick Stone or Danielle or whoever, just to be like, does this sound stupid? Like that's ultimately, I'm like, I don't want to be out here looking stupid because, people are unkind.
Yeah,
Social media can be very unkind. And so I just want to make sure that it at least sounds like decent at the end of the day. So yeah, I'm still very shy. I still don't even like to talk about my work sometimes, like in public and, or to strangers in the street. I'm like, oh God, they're talking to me. Oh God. It's
sure.
like-
I want to go back to something you said, Tiff, because and it's something you alluded to, Jason, which is the nature of specifically the New York Times bestseller list. Like Tiffany, you mentioned like the first week of the scammer, the expectation was you were going to be on the list, and the data suggested that you should have been. And so the question I have for both of you, because this question has lingered, and we may not have an answer, how does that list even work?
There's been a lot of different theories over the years. Um, I was told a million years ago, maybe, yeah, a million years ago, I was told that it works like the TV scan, right? That like Nielsen, right?
Mm.
Like back in the day with cable, remember we all had cable boxes and all of that back in the day. I don't know how old the people in this seminar are, but Google cable box. We used to have these cable boxes, and that basically the way that TV ratings would work was that the ratings worked based on whoever had the special boxes, right? So like if you had a box, if Tiff had a box in her house, and I had a box in my house, our television habits count toward the ratings of the show. But Lamar, if you don't have a box in your house and you're watching the same shows as we are, yours isn't being counted in the same way. And so the way I was taught about the list was that there are bookstores that are part of the book scan, right? And it's why publishers, specifically in the children's space, set up these tours that go to such random places, right? It's like, yo, why am I in this little teeny town in Illinois when Chicago is 2 hours away? I could go to Chicago, but instead I'm in this little podunk town because this particular bookstore counts for the book scan, right? And so this is the way I was taught. Now, over the years, it has been said that maybe that's not true. Right. And somebody told me that somebody was like, well, your bestseller list really, somebody said, like, if you, let's say you sell 10,000 copies, like the list is only, it's contextualized by what everybody else sold too, right? So you might have sold a hell of a lot of books, but if the other 9 people on that list sold 3 times as much for whatever reason, then you have to deal with that. Then there was a moment where they were talking about people buying the books up, and there was all the cheating that was happening for a moment that we had to deal with that. Right. And then it was like, well, how do we account for Amazon and digital sales? How do we account for ebooks? How do we, and then they have an ebook list. They had to create an ebook list, right? Because of this. And we had to it's just all that to say, at least I don't, maybe Tiff does, right? But like, do you know for sure how it goes?
No, no, I don't. And I mean, I damn near hired a private investigator to
It's
figure it out
crazy.
because I am a very analytical person and I come from the TV world, right? So I know a lot about Nielsen. I know how that works. Like I couldn't have a Nielsen box because I worked in television. So I didn't
Exactly.
but anyone else could have a Nielsen box. And that actually, those were critical in terms of how we moved our shows and how, we got sponsors and dollars. So the fact that we don't have that real, like, accurate information of how the New York Times bestseller list works really is very convoluted and really kind of shows how much, like, sometimes I feel like it plays favoritism.
Sometimes it does.
And I hate to say it like that, but sometimes it does. But I'm going to give you a really good example because Jason's right that there are specific bookstores that report to the New York Times. And so book tours and, events will be sort of targeted towards those bookstores because we want to make sure that we get at least that first week. But I've also learned that the list plays differently in different categories. So for instance,
Yeah.
middle grade, you don't have to sell as many books in one week than you would have to sell in YA, but you could sell, a whole bunch of books in on the adult market, and you would still never hit that list.
No.
And so it is very subjective and it will drive you absolutely crazy. And hence why I say I would not focus on the list. I'm a really good, and also it's very convoluted in a lot of ways. And I've been telling everyone this, and it's complete shade. But my first book, allegedly, right, that came out in 2017. It has never been on the list, ever. It has sold, since it's been out since 2017, it has sold hundreds of thousands of copies. It has never been on a list. And I think that that's really important to note. Even last year it sold over 100,000 copies. In one year, it was never on the New York Times list. It was never on Indie's bestseller list. It was never on the USA Today. It was on no list. So that's what I mean by, like, sometimes, a book will be in someone's orbit. The eyes are on will be on them, and then they will be on the list. So I would not, for me, I would say I would not put all my eggs in one basket of, like, oh, if I'm not on the list, I'm not a good author. No, you are actually a good author. You are a quiet bestseller, and I think that's more important for you to actually have a career as an author than just one best-selling book.
I agree. I mean, look, even if you think about middle grade series, I've written series, and ain't no way that my series is ever gonna break through on the list. I mean, I think the track series broke through one time, maybe over the course. I mean, it's been around for 10 years and it
Hmm.
sold millions of copies, and it's only broke the list one time because how am I going to beat Diary of a Wimpy Kid? How am I going to beat Dog Man? How am I going to beat Captain Underpants? How am I going to beat uh,
Right.
Wonder, right? Or not Wonder? What's the one? What's Raina Telgemeyer's joint? Smile, or what's the I'm talking about?
Yeah,
Space.
the smile. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
how am I ever going to beat those books? It's like those books are like locked in and they've been there for years. Nothing is going to break through, and so
Right.
you can sell gazillions of books, and it doesn't matter. And it's like this is ridiculous, but
And
it's
I'll speak to this a little bit too. I mean, I've only technically I've been on the list. The one time was when we did the Black Boy Joy, Jason,
yeah, yeah.
Kwame Mabalia's anthology. That hit number one. And I remember this specifically. Hit number one the day before my daughter was born.
Did it? I didn't even know that joint hit number one on the list.
Yeah, yeah, they hit
It
number
just
one the
kind
day
of out.
before
Oh man.
my daughter was born. And so, I always joke that I'm 1/17th of a number one New York Times bestseller. Um, but the truth, I mean, I've not been on the list otherwise, and I've made a good living. Still make a good living. So, I mean, I just want to speak to that for anyone who is listening and thinking about that sort of thing. You can still do well in this industry without that accolade.
Yeah.
I'll take it. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'll take it. But you can be a quiet bestseller. And the truth is, I've had the Amazon banners and stuff. I just don't talk about it because, like, I'm a little bit old school. And, like, how do you mention that? Like, I felt really awkward when we did Static Up All Night, and DC Comics put on the cover that I was a New York Times bestseller because of Black Boy Joy, and I was like, "Can y'all take it off?" And it was like, "No," and it made me feel weird just because I'm very used to you don't claim it unless you did it by yourself.
Mm.
Um,
Here's another one other two quick, very short notes that I'll add about the list. And Amazon actually. Number one, another myth or another like theory around the myth about around the list is also people say that like you could use the list as a way to judge your publicity dollars in publishing. So that the way it breaks down usually is that the top three books on the list are PRH, Penguin Random House. The next three books, the next three or four books on the list are usually HarperCollins, and the bottom three are Simon and Schuster, and that it stratifies publicity dollars. And so it's an interesting experiment to look at with how the money's being spent too. The list does give you a snapshot, not always a pure science, but it does give you an interesting thing to look at when it comes to like thinking about what publishers and how they oftentimes do line up in thirds in this way. It's fascinating. And the other thing I'll say is Amazon does count and it does matter, Lamar. And the reason why I know this is because so I have a publicist, fortunately, I'm very privileged in all of this shit, but we want to talk about it. I have a publicist, and whenever I do any of the TV stuff, right? So any of the TV stuff or even any of the radio stuff, my publicist the whole time while it's airing, she's on Amazon.
mhm.
She's watching Amazon numbers. And she's able to predict based on if your book cracks, like if it cracks the 2000 mark, right? This is 2,000 best sold books for this hour or this day. You're in the top 2,000. If it cracks that 1,000 mark, she can tell you exactly where you should line up on the list based on how books are selling just from Amazon in real time. In real time. So it does count.
It's good to know. I'll be a little less shy about it.
It does count. It
Um,
does count.
so because we're talking about not being on the list and like just still how important it is just have your career be what it is, I want to ask you, what's the best early career decision that you think you made, whether that's focusing on a specific project or going on the road to do in-person visits? Like, what do you think was a really smart thing that has helped accelerate your visibility?
Hmm. Uh, I mean, for me, it was definitely the road, but it was the road, and I basically developed 2 or 3 talks that could be done without a PowerPoint at any given time, anywhere in the world, right? Didn't matter what it was, universal themes that felt very personal, a 30-minute joint, a 45-minute joint, an hour and a half joint that I could interchange whenever I wanted to, and that I could do with nothing but a microphone. Now, not everybody may have, like, public speaking is a scary thing for a lot of us. So like, I'm not saying that that's everybody's way, but that was the golden ticket for me. It was the magic trick. So like, the book was the book, but if I could get on stage, I could convince anybody to pick it up. And knowing that they didn't have any marketing dollars for me, right? I was told that there's no marketing budget. Right. So get out there, champ. Right. And then so I had to go and do, and it was the best decision. It was the hardest thing, and it was frustrating, and it should not have had to go that way. But it was the best decision that I made. Ain't nobody gonna believe in you like you.
So this actually mixes with the best author advice I ever got, which was actually from Jason. And he told me this, and I was so annoyed, but he was actually right. And I hate when he's right. So it's just
I'm glad this is being recorded, yo.
yeah. So this was like probably November, right before Allegedly came out. So it was like November of 2016. And we were at some event, and I was complaining about how I felt like, yo, there was no marketing dollars for Allegedly, nothing was happening, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, don't worry about all that. Keep writing your books. Your next book will sell your last book. And I was all annoyed, like, what kind of advice is that? Blah, blah, blah. And he was 1,000% right, because I kept on writing. I didn't really focus too much on the marketing. I mean, I went out there. I definitely was like, kind of like pushing and hustling and stuff like that. But I focused more about the book, and because I knew the books were ultimately going to make a name for me. So a lot of people have found me through, let's say, like my most recent book, they found the scammer, and they went back and read my whole body of work. So they
Mhm.
went back and read like Allegedly, which allegedly in that first year didn't sell as much as it's selling now. And that says a lot to the idea of like your newest, latest, and greatest books is always going to sell your last books, because if they like your latest and greatest, they were always going to go back and read your other titles. So yeah, shout out to Jason or whatever.
Yes.
So look, we got 13 minutes left. We got 13 minutes left. I got a couple of selfish questions I want to ask you all. I got a break for a couple of minutes to give some announcements, and then we'll go to viewer questions for the rest of the time.
Okay.
So my quick selfish questions. Tiffany, when are we going to Stephen King's house?
It has to be the summer. It's got to be
Wait, you know Stephen King?
no,
No,
I mean,
no. We're just going to
Oh,
his house.
boy, this is being recorded, man. Y'all about to get arrested. This is crazy.
honey, you could bail us out. It's fine. Um,
I'm thinking August. I'm thinking August, Tiff.
yeah,
August and
I feel
May
like
should be pretty.
August is a good time to go to,
Yeah,
because it's supposed to be nice up there and stuff.
yeah,
Yeah, it'll
yeah.
be cold otherwise. Yeah.
I'll call you later. We'll put it on the calendar.
Okay, cool.
Jason.
Jason, you can't come.
Clearly, I would love to come, but I didn't get invited. No doubt.
Jason.
Yeah.
Was the Jennifer Hudson Spirit Tunnel scary?
No, not for me. Man, I was an outside kid, bro. Like, this is the fascinating thing about like being a writer, is that the bulk of us are exactly who people think we are, which are like nerds. And then there's like some of us who are nerds, but also didn't grow up in the bookstore or the library. Like, I was an outside kid. I loved to party. I loved to like, I'm from DC. We had go-go's. We had like I love that kind of thing. So for me, I was so happy to me. I was like, yes. They were like, do you want to do spirit time? I'm like, hell yeah. And they're like, no, you don't get to know what song, you don't know what the, and I'm like, I, I grew up I'm out. Just turn the
Outside, my
hit the music. I'm ready to go.
side.
So nah, brother, I loved it. It was the most fun I've ever had on television, honestly.
That was fantastic.
Yeah,
Uh,
thanks.
Tiffany, what's your best tip for getting a tiny human to go to sleep?
Oh my God. Tiny
Oh
human.
yeah.
Typically we have a little dance party before we do like bedtime routine. So she has to, kind of get all of her like wiggles and giggles and stuff out. But yeah, and then like, she typically we put on her like sleepy time music as she goes to bed. She is a big reader. She likes to read like at least 3 or 4 books. And one of those books she's reading herself, so it's a lot of baby babble. And then she says the end, and the story is actually over. And then
Mhm.
she goes to bed. So that is the only trick I got is a dance party beforehand.
We have sleepy time music too, and it's surprising what the songs are. Melanie likes Alexander O'Neill.
What?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We play a lot of old school R&B. So she'll just
That's amazing.
she'll be like Alexa, play the best of Alexander O'Neill.
Oh man, yes.
That's amazing.
Jason, what's your best coffee making tip?
Depends on what kind of coffee you're making, but that primarily it's all about um the weight of the coffee, like the weight of the water should be 15 times the weight of the coffee, right? So fifth, so like if you've got 16 or 17 or usually 18 grams of coffee, then you want to have about 200 or so, 250 grams of water. It's about ratio more than anything else. It's about ratio. That's it. Easy peasy.
And would you happen to know a good source of coffee beans?
Yeah, man. I happen to own a roastery. It's called Taste Coffee. It's the most delicious coffee in America by far. I think you should check it out. You know what I mean?
But thank y'all for indulging me. I got a couple of quick announcements, and then we'll get to audience questions. So I'm gonna try to share my screen. I'll see if I don't mess this up. First announcement: World of Publishing will be back a month from now on March 4th to discuss award winners with National Book Award winner Elizabeth Acevedo and Newbery medalist Meg Medina. See if y'all can see this. Can y'all see the picture?
Yes.
Yeah. So we'll be back here same time. The registration process is the same. I'll try to drop the link in the chat while we're doing audience questions. But if you enjoy these conversations, we're doing it again a month from now. And then our second announcement, let me get back. So this one's really exciting because we've not announced this yet. On Tuesday, April 21st, we're going to have a live in-person event that you'll definitely want to attend. We're going to be bringing in America's hottest thriller writer. He's the author of Blacktop Wasteland, Razorblade Tears, All the Sinners Bleed, which is going to be a Netflix series, and King of Ashes. He's Virginia's very own S.A. Cosby. I'll be in conversation with him, and it's going to be a good time. I'm going to drop the link into the chat while we do questions. It's an in-person event. Seating's limited. So if you're interested in coming, make sure you register. It's free. There will be a book sale and signing afterward.
Fire.
Yeah. So
I may pop in. I may pop up.
When you said the bus thriller writer, I was like, Tiffany right here on the joint, though.
Oh, that's so.
That's crazy. I'm like, she's right here, bro. Oh, Big Tiff.
all right. So audience questions. Let's see what we have here. This is from Elizabeth Spencer. This is a question about memoir. I understand that memoirs are tough sell in publishing, especially for debut authors. Do you have any insight on trends in publishing, and will memoir ever be significant again if you're not a celebrity journalist or MFA? I don't know much about memoir. Do you all have any insight there?
I'm writing not a memoir, but I'm helping a friend write his memoir. It's a weird thing. We're doing like I'm writing his memoir, but so it's not a memoir, but kind of is. It's complicated. Um, I don't know I mean, I've seen some in my inbox for agenting stuff. The truth of the matter is that it just has to be a good story, right? So like celebrity memoirs is not about story, it's about money. So we're clear. Celebrity memoir is about how to get bread, how does the publishing industry, they see it as a layup. Everybody's going to want to be in this person's business, and so we'll publish this whether it's actually interesting or not. for any other civilian to get a memoir published, it just has to be a damn good story. And unfortunately, because of the sort of way that we think of story, it kind of needs to be a bit of a circus, right? Like it's like, what was the joint Glass Castle that blew up all those years ago? Lamar, remember that joint?
I don't remember it.
Glass Castle, I think it was called. It was like some wild story about this woman, or like cult stuff. People love to read about cults, you know what I mean? Or, or unfortunately, extraordinarily traumatic stuff, right? People love to read about that. Or fortunately or unfortunately, I mean, it's interesting, right? Or, really strange family dynamics, right? And so I think yeah, unfortunately, it just needs to be kind of raucous,
Mhm.
at least to get somebody hooked. Um, yeah, that's all I got though. But I don't see any trends. Like trends are trends.
Yeah.
Don't pay no attention to that stuff, right? Just make the best book.
Yeah. I mean, and speaking of trends, if you're paying attention to a trend now, by the time you finish and publish, it won't be a trend then.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Um,
Yeah.
this is from Rachel K. How do you continue to be inspired?
Bills. I promise you that the bills will inspire you. Medical bills, daycare, car notes, they will inspire you. Outside of that, I do feel that like one of the best ways to be inspired is by watching other authors. Like
Mm,
I love watching Jason's journey and Lamar's journey. I love watching my other friends like do like amazing things. And so that always keeps me inspired and keeps me motivated to like, kind of like match their energy in a lot of ways. So yeah, I feel like, following other authors is actually a really great idea. Or even just, picking up a book from an author. I just picked up this book called Dear Writers by Maggie Smith. It's supposed to have a pep talk and practical advice for the creative life. So sometimes you just need like a pep talk or whatever. So that's something, I don't know how good this is. I just picked it up literally yesterday. So yeah. So sometimes,
yeah. And for me, I think I'm just like, here's the thing, what should be noted is that uh, I don't have like living partner or child, right? So I get to live like a teenager, right? And so, which is good when it comes to being inspired because I have a lot more wiggle room than some of my friends, right? To just do anything at any point in my life. And so I love and so because of that, I try to be as curious as possible. Museums are amazing. Learn things that you don't know. Like you kind of got to nerd out sometimes. And I think we forget that the whole point of writing isn't to find answers. It's to find more discovery, at least to me. It's to find more questions. You know what I mean? And I love it, which means that we have to start with some questions. And or just thinking about the life in which you live slightly askew. I had a Uber delivery. Tiff, I think I might have to write like a thriller. I don't know how to, so maybe I'll call you and be like, help me get the beats. But I had an Uber the other day. Uber driver comes up like on his bike or whatever. He drops the and it's snow outside, so I'm watching to make sure he don't slip on the steps. And he gets up the steps and he puts the bag down, and then he goes back down the steps. And I get the bag, and he's still outside. And I like wave to him and say thank you, and he says okay. And then I take my food in the house, and then I walk back to the window, and he's still just standing outside my house. And I'm like, and then I like back away from the window, and I like go back to my kitchen. I do a little bit, and then I like pop over to see if he's pulled off on his bike, and he's still just standing there. And I thought to myself, I'm finna write about you. You're gonna be a short story or something. you because I could
you are about to be a
yeah, something
story.
because I'm like, yo, because now my brain is going like, what is he doing? What is he thinking? What is he planning? What is he plan? And that's how you like, you know what I mean? Your everyday
Yeah.
life, it's all right there. You know what I mean?
Yo, the best kind of inspiration is the what if questions. Like, what if he was plotting on me? What if he came in? And stuff like that. I got most of my ideas from just like, what happens if the murderer was down the road? Like, what would I do? Like that kind of thing. Yes, I
Exactly.
love that. Yes.
I, I got another selfish question. What's the most fun thing you've ever bought with writing money?
What? Oh, Lamar. I already know what my answer is,
Go
Lamar.
ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
A Porsche 911.
Woo!
A Porsche 911. I done already sold it, but I had it for years. I had it for years. I love that car. It was my dream car, and I will be buying another one. But I bought a Porsche 911, and I live in the city, and the rats ate up the wires, and so I had to go ahead and get rid of it. But man, that was definitely the answer.
What about you, Tiff?
For me, it was trips. I travel a lot. I've gone to I'm sorry, six of the seven world wonders. So, and even outside.
Hey,
So, like Egypt is not a world wonder. So, been there. I've been to Cuba. I've been to, Peru, or I was just in Peru. I'm going to Bali in May. So yeah, most of my writing money goes to my trips and making sure that I can just have a good time. So I think that's probably the best things that I've bought. And also, my kid, I definitely use writing money to have a kid because there was no other way that she was going to get here without it. So, yeah.
And my answer to this is I buy a bunch of nerd stuff. Like my favorite thing is this lightsaber over my shoulder, this Darth Vader's lightsaber. So I buy a bunch of nerd trinkets. And
that's cool.
with that, I want to thank you both for hanging out. I appreciate it. I'm sure the William and Mary community appreciate it. The session is recorded. For anyone who didn't get a chance to see it, you let them know. It'll be up on YouTube soon. Thank you both. I hope we get to hang out in person again sooner than later.
For sure.
Yeah.
I might come down there for the S.A. Cosby joint, bro.
Come down.
Yeah,
Come
that's
down.
actually kind of dope. Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
I'll send y'all. I mean, we'll talk. We'll talk.
It will
yeah.
talk.
Well,
All right,
probably.
y'all. Thank you, everybody, for coming
Peace,
out.
peace.
Enjoy the rest of your week.